Okay, this is the 22nd of January. This is 4.2b, day 4. So we're still solving right triangles. Our question for the day is, how do I use trig ratios to solve right triangles? Remember that trig ratios, that's SOHCAHTOA. So we're using the same steps that we've been using. Draw the triangle if we need to. Make sure that we label the angles where C is always the right angle and the sides are opposite that. Identify which trig ratio with the given information and what's missing. Write the ratio. And then solve for the variable and evaluate using a calculator. If we have to repeat steps 2 through 4 just because sometimes we might need more than one piece of information from the triangle. So let's start with the practice where we have to draw the triangles. As you can see, these are just the numbers. So if you don't label the triangle correctly, we're going to struggle to find the pieces that we're being asked. So for each one, we're going to draw our right triangles. And remember that C is always the right angle. So that means that A and B can be anything. But then when we label the opposite sides, oops, see, like I just did that incorrectly, that should be a C. We have to label the sides correctly. Once we do that, then we do this information right here. So find A. That means this is X. Measure of angle B is 64 degrees. So that's this angle right here. And little b is 15. So what do I have? I have B and A, and in relation to this angle, B is opposite and A is adjacent. So using SOHCAHTOA, I have O and A, that's TOA. The tangent of 64 degrees equals 15 over X. When X is in the denominator, we can switch so that X equals the tangent of 15 divided by the tangent of 64, which comes out to be 7.3. That's it. All we have to do is be able to label the parts of the triangle, and then we're good. Now, number 2 focuses more on what we did in class on Tuesday. So we start by drawing our triangle. So that, and here's C. Notice that this time I switched A and B. It doesn't matter. A, C, B. But this time, this is a theta. Means I don't know that. Little b is 8, and C is 12.3. So for this angle, B is opposite, and C is the hypotenuse. So when I have H and O, going back up here to my SOHCAHTOA, that's so. The sine of theta is 8 over 12.3. When we don't have an angle, but we do have the two sides, I have to use inverse functions, like the ones that we learned about on Tuesday, to be able to solve that. So then we do arc sine of sine theta equals arc sine of 8 over 12.3, where these functions cancel, and I get that theta equals, when you enter this in the calculator, that second function sine, 8 divided by 12.3, close the parentheses, please remember to do that, and we get that theta is 40.6 degrees. Okay. Next step. Don't forget to pause this if I go too fast, because you don't have the opportunity to ask questions, and then you can always go back and listen to it again. So, same thing, C, B, A, C, A, B. Find C, that means this is X. I do that every time because I like to solve for X, and I want to identify what I don't know. So then angle B is 61 degrees, and little b, or side B, is 14.6. So then, using angle B as my reference, this is the hypotenuse, and B is opposite. So I have O and H. That's so. The sine of 61 is opposite, which is 14.6 over hypotenuse. When X is in the denominator, we can switch so that X equals 14.6 divided by the sine of 61. Put that in the calculator just the way it's written, and we get this X, or side C, is 16.7. Just to change it up a little bit, we're going to draw our triangle this way. It doesn't matter. Sometimes that point and grab thing isn't the most effective. So here's C, A, and B. This time I'm looking for angle B. That means this is my theta. Side A is over here, and it's 6. Side C is 16. Side B I don't need. We're going to write it down anyway. And then we're going to adjust that from this angle, this is the hypotenuse, and this is adjacent. So I have an A and an H. That's ka. So cosine theta equals 6 over 16. This is my only variable. That's the only thing I don't know. So that means that I have to use inverse functions to get rid of cosine. So arc cosine of cosine theta equals arc cosine of 6 over 16. This cosine and arc cosine cancel, so that I have theta equals, in the calculator, you do second cosine, 6 divided by 16. Don't forget to close the parentheses, and we get that theta is 68.0 degrees. We are rounding to the nearest tenth. So make sure that you do that so we can keep some kind of a consistency, so that when we have tests, you remember that we are rounding to 1 decimal place. All right. Now, I want you to notice as we look at these next 4 problems that it says solve each triangle. When it says to solve the triangle, that means that I want to know all the angles and all the sides. We're still doing to the nearest tenth, but we're looking for all the information. So I mentioned in the notes yesterday that you're expected to remember that the angles in a triangle equal 180 degrees. So I don't have to do any real work to find angle B. Angle B is 180 minus 90 minus 53, which is 37. You're expected to remember that without extra promptings. So now that I know that angle, I just have to find the other 2 sides. So let's label those. This is side B, side A, and side C. Just because I like to use the information I'm given and not the information that I find, I'm going to use angle A to find my 2 missing sides. So for angle A, this is opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. So if I use A and O, the tangent of 53 equals 4 over B. So I can switch these 2 because the denominator is here, so that B equals 4 divided by the tangent of 53, which is 30. And then to find C, that would be opposite and hypotenuse. So the sine of 53 is 4 over C. Again, switch it, where C equals 4 over the sine of 53, which is, sorry, that was 3.0, not 30, 5.0. So now, someplace, because I solved so many things, you need to make a little box that tells me angle B is 37 degrees, side B is 3.0, and side C is 5.0. And that needs to be someplace that's clear that I can find it, especially because we have so much work in this one problem. So now let's do it again. This is side C, this is side B, and side A. By subtracting, actually let's start up here and let's say that angle B equals, side B equals, and side A equals. So this is where I'm going to put my final answers. Angle B is 180 minus 90 minus 16, which is 74 degrees. So I'm going to write that up there. And then for angle C, as my reference, just because, like I said, I prefer to use work that I've been given, not work I solve for, I'm going to say that I can use, this is opposite, the hypotenuse, and adjacent. So for angle 16, I can say that I can use opposite over adjacent. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. That's not a B, 6, that's a B. I can use opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite over hypotenuse is so. So the sine of 16 equals A over 13. That's an A, not a 9. So multiply both sides by 13. A equals 13 times sine of 16. Just put that in the calculator normal, and that comes out to 3.6. So then I'm going to go up here to my little box and put 3.6 as the measure for side A. Then to find side B, that's adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent over hypotenuse is ka. So cosine 16 equals adjacent, which is B, over 13. Multiply both sides by 13. I get B equals 13 times cosine of 16, which is 12.5. And I write that up in my little box. So you want to make sure that I can tell where your answers are, especially if you've been asked to solve for a triangle. And you want to make sure that you are giving me every opportunity to give you credit by showing me some work. I know that you can do this step about the angles in the calculator, but if you do, you're going to miss the opportunity for me to say, well, you just subtracted wrong, or something. I won't be able to tell where you got the numbers that you got if you make a mistake. All right, the last two, your favoritist. We got to draw a triangle, and then we got to label it, and then we got to solve. So let's start doing that. So we start with the fact that I have a right triangle. Oops. So here's C, A, and B. Label our sides. So the measure of angle A is 34 degrees, and side A is 9. That means that at some point I need to solve for angle B, side B, and side C. So here's my little box where I put my work when I'm finished. Angle B is 180 minus 90 minus 34 equals 56 degrees. I know that you can do that in a calculator. Write it down. You need the credit. I need to see how you think. For using angle A, because remember I used the one that I'm given, I'm going to say this is the opposite side, the hypotenuse, and the adjacent side. So the first one I'm going to do is O and H. So the sine of 34 equals 9 over C. That's a 9. So C equals 9 divided by the sine of 34. 9 divided by the sine of 34 is 16.1. 1. So then come up here in your little box and put 16.1. Then I'm going to do the next angle, or the next side. So using the one that I've been given, not the one I found, but the one I've been given, this is an opposite and adjacent. So that's the tangent, that's TOA. The tangent of 34 equals 9 over B. B equals 9 divided by the tangent of 34. Put that in your calculator and we get 13.3 degrees, or sorry, 13.3 units in length. You can see that my 9s start to look a little bit like my A's. That's why your penmanship is so important. You've got to be clear. But lowercase and uppercase letters mean different things. All right, one more example. Draw your triangle. So there's my triangle, ugly as it is. C, B, A, C, B, A. A is 36, B is 14.9. That means at some point I'm going to solve for angle B, side A, and side C. Start with angle C. 180 minus 90 minus 36 is 54 degrees. A question like this on a test might be 4 or 5 points. 1 point for the drawing that's labeled correctly, 1 point each for each answer, and maybe half or a quarter point for the work that you show me for each step. So be aware that do as much as you can and give me every opportunity to give you credit. So here's my angle. For this angle, this is adjacent, hypotenuse, and opposite. So opposite over adjacent, that's the tangent. So TOA, the tangent of 36 is A, see my stupid little tail there, over adjacent, which is 14.9. Multiply both sides by 14.9, and I get that A is 14.9 times the tangent of 36, which is 10.8. So come up here to our little box and put 10.8. So then to find side C, I have adjacent and hypotenuse. That's ka. Cosine 36 equals adjacent, which is 14.9 over my hypotenuse. Those switch places so that C equals 14.9 divided by the cosine of 36, which is 18.4 degrees, or sorry, 0.4 units. So come back up here, 18.4. So when you're doing this, draw your triangle. Label the angles and then the sides, and then give me the opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent in relationship to whatever angle you're going to use. Solve for the missing angle, and then you're going to use inverse sines. Not inverse sines, you're going to use trig ratios to be able to solve for the missing sides. All right. Please work on your assignment today. You have 2 assignments that the substitute will give to you this morning. Please make sure that you make every attempt to do them. One of them is due at the end of class. Work on that one first. And the second one we will work on Thursday when I return if you haven't finished it or have questions. If you have questions on the one that's due today, turn it anyway, and we will go over it again when I come back to class.